Rachel, do we want to head and go ahead and get started with the rest of the program?
Yeah, you can go ahead and get
Okay.
started. I'm gonna
Okay.
reach out to Martha now and see if she's
Okay.
running behind or something.
All right. Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Thanks for coming out to or being here for the meeting today. Um Let me call up the agenda. Let's see. Did you drop that in the chat, Rachel?
Yeah, let me drop it real quick.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing it.
Hey, sorry I'm a little late.
Oh, hey. Hey, how you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good, good. I'm just reminding myself of the items on the agenda, even though I helped put it together.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everybody, for coming out. Uh, Martha here shortly, I'm hoping is going to lead our discussion, her and Nadine and myself, about the survey, where we are with that. Um, and then, of course, Tony, you got some special people to introduce to us. As a matter
Yeah,
of fact, why don't you go ahead and do that right now, since they're here now?
that'd be an honor. So, Secretary Susan Klutz and I are delighted to have from Rowan County, Salisbury, some members of our elections board. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Katrelia Hunter, who is the secretary of the Rowan County Board of Elections. She also obviously is a board member. And I'm going to veer off the elections landscape and tell you she is also moderator of the Salem Presbytery for the Presbyterian Church USA. She is a big deal. So we are really glad to have her this afternoon. She is terrific, and she works out regularly at the Rowan YMCA. Really proud.
All
Also,
right, welcome.
Sharon Main. I have not met Sharon yet, but Sharon does a great job. Sharon and her team. Sharon is the director of election of the Rowan County Board of Elections, and just went through the March 5th primary, as far as I know, without any problems. And really glad to have Sharon and Dr. Hunter and their expertise to talk with us today. So thanks to Martha and Myron and Ted for letting us invite them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thrilled to have them. I also invited. We were looking for information about voter access, so I've invited one of the other commissioners, Shara Blackburn, who often serves as a chief judge in Wake County, and her many years of doing this, and sort of her direct work with voters. I thought she could also ask some questions. We thought we would bring together a panel of individuals that would be able to talk to us about voter access. So I'm just thrilled, Sharon and Katrelia, if I may, to have you and share it today. So
I am
Thank
also
you.
thrilled to have your presence here. If Sheriff, if I had known you were going to be here, I would have let you handle number four, because a lot of the information on felon voting, a lot of the information I'm drawing straight from a document that you contributed to and gave
oh,
away. So yeah, excellent.
excellent.
Martha, did you want to get started with the update on the survey?
Well, do you want to hear from maybe from our
Yeah,
guests
I
first,
think that's a good
so
idea.
they
Yeah,
can
just go
not
ahead and
have to
kind
listen
of.
to, unless they're dying to hear what we're doing.
That's
Which
right.
I don't know, they might be interested, and I guess they
Yeah,
could
they might
welcome to
be.
hear about it. But maybe
But
we should
yeah,
hear from our
yeah,
guests for
yeah,
some of the time first.
yeah. Let's go
But
ahead and
yeah,
hear from our guest. So now the order I have here is Dr. Hunter first, then Miss Blackburn, then Miss Main. So Dr. Hunter, if you want to kick it off, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'll be happy to do that. It's certainly a pleasure for me to join you today, and also to have Sharon Main, our elections director here in Rowan County, join with us as well. One thing that Tony didn't tell you that I think is also important is that I am a 40-year higher education administrator, and that my last role was at Livingstone College, where I served for some 30 years in the administration. And I like to tell people I enjoyed every minute of it. But when it's time to retire, it's time to retire and move along. And I
And
have
I,
had an opportunity.
may I interrupt you and just add
You
that
certainly may.
something she left out was that she served as interim president of Livingstone College. Not just the
yes.
administration, she was president. And
I did.
she
I
did an
the
excellent
last 2
job
years.
with everything she
Thank
did.
you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Susan Klutz and Secretary. Thank you.
Thank
I was
you.
just about to say that Tony and Susan are our hometown people, and it's always a joy to see them. But it's also a joy to see all of you, to meet you and have this opportunity just to hear a little bit more about what your commission is doing, because it's certainly an important topic. And as I looked at your information, some of it on the website, you certainly have assembled an impressive list of representatives for this group from throughout the state. So I mean that is really, really commendable as far as I'm concerned, and is very interesting. And so I might stick around to hear a little bit more about what you're actually doing, because it's of interest, and those of us who work with elections know how important it is for our elections to be clean and fair, and for us to do everything that we can to make the future better than it is even today, if that's possible. So let me just make a few comments here. First of all, let me say that as a member of the board, and I've been on the board since 2018. Prior to that, I worked elections as an assistant judge and a volunteer for several years in this county, and had excellent experiences doing that. When I worked at the precincts, I asked to work in my home precinct, and found that to be a very, very interesting responsibility. One of the reasons it was interesting to me, because I hadn't done that before. It was interesting to people in this area because I believe I was one of the first Black people to work as an election worker in Cleveland, North Carolina. Now I know that's a big city here in Rowan County in North Carolina, and most of you heard so much about it, but I was. And so I enjoyed the opportunity to do that. I enjoyed the opportunity to encourage others to get involved in the process in the off hours, and it was just a very gratifying experience. So when I was given the opportunity to serve on the Board of Elections, of course I said yes, although that is a different type of role, and it takes you out of it when you're working at the precincts, because we have to be nonpartisan in our work activities. It takes us out of it, but it's still an opportunity to make a difference in the community and in the state and in our nation. And so I thoroughly enjoyed that. As most of you know, those of us who do serve on the board, we are more so responsible for setting and working with the policies that are established by the state, for overseeing the elections, for assisting the staff in selecting of the volunteers, and for assisting them in managing the elections. Now, let me make no mistake about it. The staff we have in Rowan County is very capable, and they manage the elections. They have all of the answers. We those of us who are board members need to say that, because we know that we can rely on them to do what needs to be done. And the issues, when Tony asked me to do this, he told me that there were several issues that this committee was interested in. He gave me a little list, and there were 4 or 5 issues. One of them was student access to the vote, and another was felons regaining their voting access. ESL translation issues, disabled voters having access, and other barriers to voting. And so Sharon and I talked about that a bit and shared some of her notes. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit more today about those first two, and she's going to share with you regarding the last three. Now, of course, I would be very interested in student access to vote, having worked at Livingstone College all of those years and at Barber Scotia, which was my undergraduate alma mater. I was there for about 10 years before I came to Livingstone. And in Rowan County, the board does work with the local colleges to help them to make access available to students. For an example, Livingstone's schedules a specific day for students to come out at early voting, and also on election, not a specific day, but on election day, I think the college still helps them or makes it possible for them to get to the polls and some to vote on that same day. Catawba has been very active in the process, and I noted from reviewing your materials how active Dr. Michael Bitzer is in a leadership role with this committee, and everybody knows who he is throughout the state and probably the country by now because of his involvement in educating us during the processes and in sharing with us. I understand that, the work that he does at Catawba is commendable, and what he does throughout the state is commendable as well. So the local board supplies whatever Livingstone might need, whatever Catawba needs. We also have Rowan Cabarrus Community College in our community. And of course, we are available to them, and Hood Seminary, which is a graduate school. We are available to them as well, although they have not called on staff specifically, I don't believe, for any particular service, but we do know that some of them are involved in the process. The second item that was on that list was felons regaining their voting access. And we know that felons who have completed their sentence can now register and vote. They can do so during early voting. They can also submit their voter registration when their sentence is complete, and our local office will, in accordance with the law, process and return them to the voter rolls. I am not aware of any challenges that we've had in so doing. If I'm incorrect about that, Sharon can correct me. We always say the staff has all the answers, so she can correct me. But in both of those areas, our board and our staff members have done everything that we can do to make voting accessible to students, as well as assist felons in regaining access to the voting. And with that, I will stop, and Sharon can respond to the other three items that you had given me, Tony, if that's okay, or she can do it after. Is it Ms. Blackburn who's going to speak? Which do you prefer, Myron?
Miss Blackburn, are you okay if Sharon goes now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay,
let's
thank
do that.
you. Thank you. Okay, Sharon.
All right. Well, I don't quite have the legacy that Dr. Katria Hunter has, but I'm honored to work alongside of her. When it came to the questions, the remaining three, we had that ESL translation issues, and I do believe we have a Spanish translator who works in our Register of Deeds that we can reach out to, but I'm not sure that all boards of elections have those options. So we can also go through the state and schedule a time to have a translator speak with a voter, but that is kind of time intensive as well. Ideally, I would love to have more precinct workers who are Hispanic, and that is a bit of a challenge. I'm trying to navigate that to see how to best reach out to recruit them. We have not had a lot of voter need as far as voters coming in and needing this, but I feel like if we had this offered, we might encourage more of the Hispanic vote. So that takes care of that one. Our disabled voters having access, I feel like we do a exceptional job with that. All of our precincts, we have 41 precincts, all of them are ADA compliant. All of our early voting sites are ADA compliant. And if they cannot physically get out of their car, of course, we offer curbside voting at both early voting and election day. So we do try to meet them wherever they are so that they can exercise their right to vote. Other barriers, I'd be interested in hearing what other barriers you guys might have seen or heard that would be out there. For me, a lot of the barriers tend to be when I talk to people, they say things that they are turned off by politics. They've got a negative vibe, and that's coming from the news media, it's coming from the social medias, it's coming from, you know, their neighbors who've decided they're not going to be politically involved anymore or vote. And that makes that low voter turnout, especially for municipal elections and primaries. We vote less than half of our registered voters. I would love to see more people come out and vote for all elections. And I would also love to see the public's perception of politics improve. I'm not sure what those answers are. I'm going to be honest, but I would like to see a shift to understanding that our elected officials are from our communities. They are representatives of our democracy, and that they are important, and then they do an important job, and that not all politicians are, you know, corrupt. You hear that so much. You hear so much negative. I would love to hear more positive about the people who step into those roles and take on those very public political positions. So I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say.
Sharon, I just want to add that your curbside voting that you provide, I've heard so many positive comments about that from people that are, you know, are limited physically, can't get out of their cars, can't walk, etc. And that service is a bestseller in terms of what we hear about the Board of Elections.
That is wonderful, wonderful feedback. I appreciate that.
Okay, on that note, let's do it this way. Let's go to Shara Blackburn. Let's hear from you, and then if we have any questions for any of our three guests, we will do those at the end. So Ms. Blackburn, can you go ahead?
Yes, my name is Shara Blackburn. I have been working Wake County elections for, well, I've just worked my 32nd election. And since 2012 have been working as a precinct chief judge. I'm an attorney by profession. I've been with the Attorney General's office and with the North Carolina Licensing Board for General Contractors. What I'm going to do is kind of give you an overall view of what it's like on the ground on election day. And it's my impression that it's also pretty much the same for early voting. This is one of the areas where it doesn't differ that much. We have special voting machines for the hearing and sight impaired. The newest one we have in Wake County is called an express vote machine. It also has a different ballot style now. It replaces the old, what we call the old AutoMark. But they are equipped for visually and hearing impaired voters. As you heard earlier, we have curbside voting. That particular accessibility is probably one of the best that I've noticed since I've been with the Wake County Board of Elections. It's really helpful, and it's well used in the precincts, all the precincts that I've worked. We in Wake County have very set procedures as to how that is to be handled. We also have accessible parking. if you're in a school or a public facility, usually these spaces are already marked out for you. But if you're not, then we have big metal signs and procedures as to how we're to go about locating these parking spaces so that people can get out with their wheelchairs or their motorized vans so that they have the same, make it as easy as possible for them to get in. When I've been in school, it's been nice because these spaces are pre-marked, and we also have the ramps. I know in the current school that I'm working in, we have 2 ramps going up and into the building. We also have specially made voting booths so that wheelchairs can easily be maneuvered underneath the voting booth. We also have special signage and pathways to ensure, ease of access for the voters, especially those with disability. Also, voters with disabilities also have the right to request assistance from poll workers or to bring someone of their choice to assist them in casting their vote. And one of the things I do want to mention here, maybe someone on this committee can help me with this, but in Wake County, it used to be that we had these big posters that were in Spanish that we would have to tack up, and they were quite heavy. We would also have ballots, sample ballots that were in Spanish. I haven't seen those now for a number of years, and I don't know why.
I think it's because they actually changed the percentage of Hispanic voters that require you to produce those materials. You have to have a certain amount of Hispanic in that community in order to do the expense of printing those ballots.
Okay, that answers that question then.
Can I ask what years were those? Because I know I don't think we have any section that's the Voting Rights Act. I don't think we have any other counties, and maybe Sharon knows of other counties that have to do it, but
No.
Meck isn't required. Mecklenburg isn't required. Do you happen to remember what year that was? I mean, you have done 32 elections apparently, so you may not.
If
curious.
memory serves me correctly, I think it was about 2014 that I recall. It's been a while, about 10 years that, we haven't been using those. I mean, it would be nice if we had precinct workers who were well-versed in Spanish. I've not come in contact with a situation where someone was not allowed to vote because they did not or could not read the ballot. Maybe that's because in that situation, they were able to have help from someone that they brought in with them. And they can do that. That's their choice.
Yes, anybody can assist as long as the voter indicates that that person is to assist them.
Exactly.
Okay,
So that's kind of, how it is for me when I'm there on election day and what we've done. But I'd say the biggest thing we have for access is that curbside voting.
Sharon,
And
do you find many people use your express vote machines?
absolutely not. The one time that they tried to use it, it was still the auto mark, and it broke.
So I did a little bit more of a deeper dive with my precinct officials so that they would understand the express vote and how simple it is to use. Because it is a touch screen, it actually benefits people that are not only hearing impaired or visually impaired, but people with Parkinson's that cannot make a small bubble on a ballot. They can benefit from it. And people that just that need to just kind of take their time and have everything really big right in front of them, one contest at a time. So like cognitive delays, those types of people benefit from it as well. And we have found that once our workers introduce someone to it, then people are eager to use it. Now, it's not a huge amount of people that use it, but as people catch on to it, we do feel like it's been much better than the old-fashioned auto mark.
It
So,
was, for our election, our primary election that just passed, we had to go in for special training this time because of that express vote machine.
Mhm.
And because it uses a different ballot style, it's very slender. We also had new tabulators. So we had to go in there and get training for both of those new pieces of equipment.
so what's your
It was, I thought it
vocabulary?
was easy to set up.
Uh-huh. Yep, it's super user-friendly. When you say you had to get a new tabulator, did Wake County go away from the DS-200?
No, I don't think it was that. It was so that this different tabulator now had a slot for the new ballot that was being used by the express vote machine.
Yes, so the DS-200 that everyone uses has a slot at the top just so the narrow ballot will feed in correctly, so it doesn't go in sideways. And so they use that top platform as opposed to the one underneath it for the regular size ballot.
I will tell you something interesting in this last election. So in Wake County, we have to, I mean, every last ballot that hits my hands when I go to pick up, I'm accountable for them. But these express vote ballots were the thing that was different this time.
Mhm.
And so when they gave me my box of express vote ballots, they thought they were giving me 100, but in the box I had 125.
And so
And
did
that
you
didn't,
record that?
it wasn't recorded on my little piece of paper that tells me exactly the number of ballots that I'm getting and that I put on our reconciliation form at the end of the night. So, you know, when you're trying to figure out why do you have more ballots, that's what happened. So that was the only little snafu, and it just happened to be with, you know, the express vote ballots. But I figured that, you know, we were able to trace it down and figure out what the problem was. So no harm, no foul. But I don't know if someone else was missing some ballots or if it just happened with everybody. But anyway,
So
we didn't
most of
use any of them.
the
We didn't use any of them.
Mhm.
the express vote ballots do typically have to be hand counted. You can get your regular paper ballots prepackaged in packs of 50 or 100, and sometimes
100.
those packages will have 101 or 102 just because of the way that they're packaged. So sometimes you do end up with a couple more. As long as you're putting that on that ballot form, that's what you've counted in, that's what you received, then that's what my office, that's what we need to know is what did you actually get? Because we don't undo the plastic packages. We just put those in, we count 100 at a time. Like I say, if you open them, you may have 101, but express votes are counted out individually. So they may have just had someone who had fatigue. They counted
Yeah.
out so many of sets of 25, they counted out too many. So
Yeah, you bring up an important point. I know I tell my workers, do not open any package until you have to pull one out, because as long as they're packaged, we can make the assumption that there are, in our case, 100 ballots in those packs.
exactly.
Different for express votes. So it certainly makes it easier at the end of the night.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely does.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing, everybody. Let's move to the Q&A portion. Rachel or Martha or someone tell me how much time our guests have with us, because I know we do have other items. I had actually about 3 questions, but I'm not going to ask 3 questions out of fairness to everybody else. And in fact, I'm going to supplant those 3 questions I had with another question altogether about this past election and the logistics of it. So the primary, you know, you had to wait. This is the first one where you couldn't count all the, or not count, you couldn't tabulate all the absentee ballots before polls closed. You had to wait till the 7:30 polls closed. Did that present any problems for y'all in either of your counties?
It did not in mine.
Okay,
We
that's
had
good to
three.
hear then.
Yeah, we just had 3 early voting sites. And it was those tabulators that we could not start until 7:30. And they do take a while before they produce a total tape. So it's a bit of a waiting game
Okay,
whenever you do it. But no, there was no hesitation this time.
okay.
Mhm, mhm.
What about in Wake County, Shara?
I haven't heard that there were any issues. I will tell you, the first thing that I do in my precinct is run those total tapes. We go to shut down that tabulator first thing. In fact, I have my judges along with me. They're not allowed to do anything else until they're with me, and we're shutting that tabulator down. So, but I didn't hear that there were any issues.
Okay, okay. I'll allow myself one more question, if the group will let me.
Mhm.
Shara Blackburn, you were mentioning that the curbside voting process this time was the best you've seen, or seen, if I heard you correctly.
It's
What
it's
were some?
always it's of any accessibility. I don't want to say thing, but
Mhm,
it is the one thing that's used more than anything else that we have is that curbside voting. And there'll be times that we have 2 people handling curbside voting because it's being utilized so much.
mhm.
And I know Wake County, I mean, it's like they keep it simple, stupid. They have flow charts for everything. And they have one for curbside voting. And, we have, it's probably the same in other counties. We have to set up this hole with a sand, a base filled with sand, and we put it out into an accessible parking space so that someone can come up and ring the bell. And then we have what we call someone with a voter assistance section, and they handle curbside voting for us. And they go out, they follow their flow chart, and they come in and they either come to me or they come to another judge, once they have the ballot filled out, and we put it in the tabulator. But I can tell you, it is very much loved and used in the precincts, all the precincts I've worked.
Okay. Martha has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you ever, I mean, so there's not someone stationed outside. Does it ever happen, or does it happen very often that they simply just don't hear the doorbell, or they're busy and distracted? Is that
No. And here's why.
Okay.
Because the night before in setup, we take that base out and we test it to make sure that it is within range.
Mm,
And
mhm.
so we have a bell right beside the door. That's where we set our table for, all to handle all voter assistance questions. So no, I guess if someone didn't set this up and test it the night before, they could have problems, but we never have because we always test it.
I haven't experienced any issues along the lines of any voters complaining that they've been waiting in curbside and no one attended to them.
Mhm.
Because the designated person, that is their role. They are to watch that curbside area and they are to monitor it so that they are prompt to get out to the car, to get the voters' information and make the voting experience positive.
So
Mhm.
dedicated person, is that typical that
Yes.
people? Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
that's always helpful. Ted has his hand up, and then Nadine.
Yeah, I'll dovetail that and combine 2 of the questions that came to mind listening to you 3 ladies. I listened through a national group best practices discussion about how to best serve voters with disabilities. And one of the conversations was about mock elections that took place in anticipation of bigger elections, probably not the scale that we recently had. So this would be our November elections. And that gentleman talked specifically about just in order to be protective of the financial resources and the time that the volunteers had, focusing those mock election opportunities on early voting sites. So I'm curious about whether you three ladies are aware of or have used those in your own precincts. And then part of that would be what Myron was just asking about. When you set up your precincts or when you recommend best practices to your precincts, do you talk about with your poll workers having specific roles or subject matter experts who are there every day so that you've got somebody who's listening for that curbside voter to ring in? Or do you have somebody that is kind of the general go-to person for the accessibility machines that you've got? I'm curious how you address all of the minutia that you've got in a polling place on any given day.
I can tell you how I handle it during setup. Actually, before setup, when I'm actually communicating by email with the poll workers that have been assigned to me, I find out where they've had experience, where they might like to work, and I go ahead and make assignments so that they pretty much know when they come in for setup where they're going to be starting out. Because Wake County wants us to rotate people to get experience in all the different stations. But I pretty much have captains at all my tables, and that would be voter assistance. That's going to be, and voter assistance also is going to be curbside voting, registration table, ballot table, help table, and so on. Like I said, they do get to rotate. But in that way, when we've got someone that has experience there, they usually are going to be able to will know to study their flow charts well ahead of time so that they can help the other poll workers that may not be as experienced. The other reason I do that is when I assign those captains to those tables, they're the ones, for instance, getting out the materials, let's say for registration table. They're also the ones that are putting them back the next night so that we don't have all of our items going back to the board, helter-skelter style. These are just some of the things I've learned to help streamline the whole process. But also, assigning these captains, they're usually more knowledgeable in these areas and they can answer some questions. It's just helped me being a chief judge.
We've not used the mock election scenario that you talked about. We've not used that in Rowan County. But just like Wake County, what Shara just shared, it is designated people cross-trained to do a couple of the different tasks within the precinct so that you're never shorthanded. If someone were to have to leave, someone else can step into that role and continue. But it is designated people at each station with that exact detail on what it is what task it is they're to perform.
Okay.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add one other thing. We also have flow charts. These flow charts are so detailed. They're designed to handle almost every kind of situation that might walk in that door. It's rare to have a situation that doesn't turn up on that flow chart, and every table has a flow chart.
Are you able, Shara, to maybe share just a copy of that, not in this meeting, but after this meeting, maybe send it to Rachel with the committee, so we can just kind of see what the flow chart looks like? Is this typical of other boards of election, or is this a Wake County thing?
I know it's a Wake County thing. I do, Martha, I think the information on the flow charts is in the materials I just sent you.
All right.
So and then you're going to let me forward
Martha-
them. Yeah, I'm curious,
Yeah.
Sharon, like Like, I guess I wonder like how much collaboration. So if Gary or Olivia come up with a flow chart, does that mean Sharon gets the flow chart too? I mean, do they share across? Do you have a
Oh,
lot
you-
of collaboration like that, or is it statewide? I don't know.
Every county is a bit independent. We come up with our own materials. We don't do necessarily the flow chart as much as we do what we call like a quick reference sheet that is a step-by-step guide on how to do your task. But we do share materials across county lines, some.
Mhm.
And we, in our regions, Wake is not in our region, but in our regions, we're a little bit better about doing that because we're a smaller core group. But we do still share things statewide as well. If someone reaches out and wants to share something, you know, the state's very open to us helping each other.
And we do have sharing among and between people who serve on boards through the state connection. In those times of training, there are what, 2 of those annually. And so we get to know and work with people from other counties and can share and call on each other as needed. It rarely happens, but that opportunity is there.
But you know, I got permission from the Wake County Board of Elections. I told them exactly what I was doing and got permission to share these things. So my understanding is Wake County is being looked at as a quote unquote so people will look at these materials and use them, share them.
County's been very good about that. I know they've actually made some additional tools that helped us upload the state election calendar into our Outlook. And these were things the state provided the initial content, but Wake County actually took it a step further. So Wake County, being a larger county and having a larger staff, I think they have a lot of resources that help them to be able to produce those things. And I am thankful that they share.
They have more money.
Yeah, hands
So,
down.
no reason not to piggyback on their resources.
Okay, let's see, I've been told we should try to wrap up, but let's make Nadine, you are probably gonna be our last question, but hopefully our guests will leave contact information available, so if we want to follow up, some of us might want to reach out to you individually. I know I do on a couple of points. So Nadine, what was your question?
Hi, I'm Nadine. Sharon, I think you mentioned that there was a threshold that you were aware of at the state level about whether the state can spend resources in printing sample ballots and materials in different languages.
I'm not sure it's from the state level. I'd have to do a little research myself, but I know you have to have a certain amount of voters that would require that language for you to print your ballots before it's a requirement for you to do that.
Okay, so you're not sure if it's like a state one. I know there's obviously the Voting Rights Act at the federal level, but I don't think any North Carolina counties qualify for
I
that.
do not. Yeah, that's where it
So-
comes from initially. Mhm.
Okay, but you're not aware of there being another one at the state level, or maybe someone who's, I mean, if they were spending money on Spanish language materials in the past, there must have been something that happened.
And
Yeah,
that-
Well,
it'd
that's
be interesting to
interesting
know.
because, you know, California has a thing where some California counties have, you know, different language ballots, even though they don't meet the Voting Rights Act requirements. But I imagine, you know, the resources are thin for many counties. And so this would be, I mean, it's kind of a stretch, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if they were required to do it. So,
That is
you know, you
before
would
my time.
think, sorry,
that-
go on.
that would be before my time. Since I've been in elections, we have not had any Spanish ballots
Okay.
in my county. So I'm not sure going back what's maybe stopped it or started it. I just know that my county does not meet that threshold to have to
Got it.
produce those
Mhm.
ballots.
Okay.
Ah,
All right. Well, thank y'all for sharing. One, yes, one question I did
Thank
want to
you.
ask, and if y'all could just don't answer it now, but I would do some thinking about it. Maybe you've already thought about it. One of the goals of this committee, which is I think it's pretty obvious, is to look at the challenges or barriers that voters have, and maybe make some recommendations on how to deal with those. So if y'all know of a pressing issue, a barrier that you know that you've seen voters face in your county, just let us know. Drop a email or something to Rachel or one of us, and so we can at least have that to look at and to think about. But again, thank you. Go ahead, Sharon.
I do want to say something. This seems like it's off the beaten path,
Okay.
but there seems to be a disconnect with DMV. And if there's, you know, a broken link,
Hmm.
I think it's there because people have an expectation when they go to DMV that they're supposed to be able to get that license and register to vote at the same time. And somehow the information is not making it over to the counties, the Board of Elections.
Okay.
I've seen that.
Okay.
I've seen that too many times, actually.
Yeah. And that really is the kind of thing, just me personally, I think is what I'm talking about. Is,
I thought,
there's a way things are supposed to work, and then there's a way they work in reality.
right,
In
and
terms
it's
of these
not a
barriers.
problem. It's not a problem when it's early voting because they can register and
Mhm.
vote right there. But it is a problem when they show up on election day because they
Mhm.
can't register and vote day of election.
Yeah. Okay.
Shara, do you find that that is primarily with the people who are doing the DMV online site and not those that
Mm.
log into DMV?
Good question. I've never asked them that, but I've had so many people come to the help table where they said, well, I registered at DMV and they said that, this was all I had to do and that, I'd be allowed to vote. And lo and behold, they show up and their ATV is not in the books.
Mhm, mhm,
Mm.
mhm.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's maybe worth thinking about. So
Yes,
thanks.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
Mhm.
kind of, check in on that. Thank you,
I do
Sherry.
know
Mhm.
there is an issue I've experienced with the online portal. It allows them to print off a PDF of their voter registration that they've just completed, but then they forget to scroll down and hit submit. I wish that the system would make them submit first and then print off later, because if they don't hit submit, it doesn't come to us. And sometimes they'll have that PDF, they'll have it with them. This is where I registered, but we have absolutely no record of it whatsoever. And then if you talk to them a little bit about it, sometimes that's the issue, is they don't remember if they hit the submit button or not.
Is that an IT issue
I think
at the
it's
State Board of Elections?
I'm not sure exactly who would address it. It might be through DMV. But
Okay.
I would think it's definitely like a software concern,
Okay.
a platform concern
Okay.
to me.
Those
Great.
are great points. Thank
Agreed.
you.
Agreed.
Thank you, Sharon. That's
And thank you. And of course, y'all are welcome to hang out while we talk about these other things. I'm sure it's all near and dear to your heart too, because of what you do. Okay, Martha, you are up and you look very
Okay.
serious, like you're about to blow us away with your info.
Okay, well, so let me tell you, so Nadine and Myron and I all met together, golly, one lovely Friday, and we put together the survey, which everybody says that they took a look at. So, or at least I sent it around to everybody. So I'm getting it up right now. Sorry, my computer is not agreeable today.
Mine either.
Oh, I'm getting a new computer soon, apparently, at some point. So let me see, browse. I was working on my computer at home. I thought I had it right there. I did not. So essentially, I'll just tell you while I'm getting the survey up so you guys can look at it. Nadine convinced me it was a good idea to get what we call the Institutional Review Board clearance. So that's human subjects clearance. So all research conducting organizations are governed by human subjects protection boards. And if you do any research, and that's the key term, on, and Rachel, I can share my screen, right?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, cool. If we do any research on human subjects, then we have to get clearance. So normally, this wouldn't necessarily be technically considered research because it's not like Nadine and I are going to be, and Myron, I guess, too, are going to be publishing it like a research article. Here's the survey. Hopefully you all can see it. It doesn't say you can on my thing, but yes, okay, there's the survey. I would say technically under the regulations, since we're not going to publish it, it's not technically research, but Nadine, being a wise one, and also suggested that if, we wanted to make sure we had all our I's dotted and our T's crossed. So I've been in the process of applying for human subjects clearance at UNC Charlotte. This is where we are right now. I then had to prepare an email, social media posts and a flyer for my IRB to look at for recruiting college students to conduct this, to take our survey. So our plan was to try to have to talk to other professors we know about getting this out. So I have an email that would go to other professors. But two, we're hoping that Leslie Gavin, who is with the NC Engage and works directly with college students, might be able to help us get this survey out. She's a little worried, though, that if we have to get Institutional Review Board clearance, that all the universities might have to, because that actually happened to them on a previous project. So we're hoping we don't have to do that. But hopefully we can get this done because, of course, finals is going to happen soon. But this is the survey. So basically, we ask if they're under the age of 18, because we're not saying, obviously 18 and over voters. We ask if they're registered to vote. We ask if they pre-registered to vote before they turned 18. We ask how likely they were to vote in the next election. And then we ask what method of voting might be easiest for you. And so we actually are thinking, apparently this is sort of a nod to the mail ballot committee, the mail voting committee, which is one of the other commissions on elections. They're interested in drop boxes. So we ask, of course, early voting in person before election day, which Nadine, did you say Wilmington is going to have a voting place on campus for the general?
I think we usually do. They just have a polling place on campus just for election day, not the early voting.
So we're kind of the opposite. We usually have one for early voting in the general elections at UNC Charlotte. And they vary, right? App State had kind of a controversy a few years ago because of where the polling site was. So ours is only during early voting when we have it. And there's one fairly close to campus, but early voting in person before election day, voting by mail, or drop off an absentee ballot in a drop box, or they have no idea, which who knows with college students. Sometimes they're a little clueless. So what method did they plan on voting with?
Is
They're
it
not always
possible,
clueless, though. I'm sorry, did you ask a question?
yeah, is it possible to add or tweak one of the questions?
Sure.
Now that you may have younger people from high school taking college classes, you can be younger than 18, but as long as you're going to be 18 or by the day of the election, you can vote. So that part about, are you under the age of 18? Maybe another question, will you be 18? If so, will you be 18 on election
Oh,
day?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
So the question should be, will you be 18 at the time of the election? Well, okay, so
Yeah.
this is a Nadine and Myron potential problem because the IRB doesn't want us to talk to kids. And technically, if you're under 18, so human subjects protection is very protective of kids.
okay.
So
Yeah,
you're
that-
absolutely right, Shara, but I guess that's
Yeah.
a question I throw to you.
But you
guys.
know, for us, someone coming in, they can vote. Let's see.
So you
They
would,
can vote
if
in a,
your birthday is what, the day before the general election, then you can vote
right.
early.
Yeah, they can vote in that primary for any race that's going to be on that day, on election day. So it comes into play with primaries. Because
Well,
you can
so
vote
this
in
is
cer-
not gonna, oh golly, you know, the runoff is all over the state and I don't want to complicate this with the runoff.
Okay.
Which, so that's another
Sorry.
question I guess I throw out to the committee. Do we worry about the runoff? Or do we just kind of hope they're not, what should we do with that? Because I don't think I thought about it then.
I have a very nerdy answer to this that is that
You?
well, as long as the people who are there's no systematic bias in choices on with respect to these things. I mean, if we miss some people who are slightly younger, is there a reason to think that someone who's slightly younger in college is going to behave differently than someone who's like 22 in college, right? So that would be my, like, maybe it's not a big deal answer, but like if we're just going to calculate a statistic at the end, it's not going to be that detailed, and I don't know how representative of a sample we're going to get. So we're probably not dealing with a totally random sample anyway.
I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense to me.
But that's a very, I was a person who voted when I was 17 in the primaries. So I know it can be done. I voted when I was 17.
And you
I'm
probably
shocked.
came into the precinct very excited about being able to vote, didn't you?
Yes, and my neighbor checked me in and said, "Hello, Nadine. It's nice to see you here."
Oh,
Yes.
I second what Nadine says. I think if our kind of guiding principle here is for feedback, to use this data for feedback to us to further investigate or to make recommendations, I think we just try to cast as wide a net with as few branches and sequels as possible, even if it does impact the sample a little bit.
so if anybody else has any comments on that, I'll just keep going. I'll let you cogitate on that and what I'm continuing to, I tend to agree. So what method do you plan on using for vote? So one thing that, we always say to the students is, you can check your registration, right? And so which is easy to do in North Carolina. So how likely are you to check your voter registration online before you were to vote? And so we included, I did not know. And I think Ted, that was some of your language, I think. And then, then to your knowledge, did I fix this? Who was it that had the concern with this question? I want to make sure I fixed it. Now I don't remember. But to your knowledge, do you have a form of photo ID that has been approved for voting? Oh, I did fix it because it was the right kind of photo ID. Yeah, I did. Do you have a form? So there's a whole bunch of colleges, which as you look through the things that Shara sent, there's a whole list of the colleges that are allowed to have their photo ID used.
Yeah. And Martha, weren't you, I believe it was you who was saying maybe at that meeting that there's another round where colleges can get on the list at
Yes,
this point.
Sharon,
yes.
yeah, it wasn't me, but you sound like you have an answer for that.
Okay.
That's good. I want to hear it.
And I would have to look the deadline up, but it is actually ongoing currently.
Okay.
If they want to go ahead and submit right now to get on that list to be added, they are
Yeah,
open, the state is open to receiving that.
Yeah, because one of our schools, the community college here, Fayetteville Technical Community College, is not on the list for approved. And
Are they going to go on the list?
I hope so. I mean, I know the public relations person. She used to be at
Mhm.
the Observer, so I'll put that question to her. So,
Cool. Yeah,
the
I
rest
mean,
of 'em
I think
are,
this
though.
is kind of an important issue. You know, if some colleges can use it and some colleges can't.
Mhm.
Well, I wonder if we'll find, you know, so you'll see a later question is what college you go to, right? And so
Yeah,
let's say you went to Fayetteville.
yeah.
Tech.
My concern would be obviously that college students hear the college
Right.
idea is acceptable,
Right.
then they show up and their colleges is not. And
Right,
that,
exactly.
so.
To your knowledge, is there a place to vote on your campus within walking distance? So that was kind of inspired by Nadine saying her students at her college had to walk across 6 lanes of traffic. I'm guessing they don't have to do that at Catawba or Livingstone or
Livingstone's very good about offering the opportunity to bus their students to the early voting site, and they do also offer transportation to their precinct. Catawba is a little bit more left up to the student, but we do see our Catawba students coming in usually during the early voting time. Now, Catawba did not apply for their student IDs, but Livingstone and RCCC for the community college, both of them did. So we have a situation like you were just talking about where one schools is accepted and another is not. But my students that have come and voted with us from Catawba usually do present a valid form of ID, another type of valid form of ID. So,
Wow, do we need to get on Dr. Bitzer?
I'll yell at him for her.
we actually have a precinct worker from out there as well, who's a professor. And when I shared that in our training, she was going to get on it. So
Okay.
we look into it. So hopefully,
Wow.
hopefully they'll get theirs approved as well.
Mhm.
If they don't, we'll have very good research agendas. Looking at a natural experiment.
Actually, that would be a really interesting, you know, because we could see how many people,
They also have the reasons that people got provisional ballots or were
Mhm,
denied
mhm,
for,
mhm.
there's like a whole listing you can download, but yeah. Let's put a pin on
that
that.
actually is very interesting. Nadine, put a pin in that, Nadine. I think that's what we're gonna.
Maybe don't
don't-
tell Michael
Walking
anything.
distance.
They also raised the question with the voter IDs during that state briefing last week that was not an issue for, I don't think, any of us while we were in university, that digital identifications that are being used at many of the colleges are not currently accepted.
That's correct. It has to be a physical ID. We have had some instances where students have taken a picture of their ID to keep it on their phone so they don't have to carry any additional ID with them, and we cannot accept that. We have to have a physical ID.
Looks like we had a question. What happened to it? Mary Ellen, did you have a question? Oh, you're muted. Okay.
Did you have a question, Mary Ellen? You are muted though.
Uh-oh. Should I go on? Okay.
Yeah, I'll send her a message in the chat.
I'll bet you I spelled accommodations incorrectly, didn't I?
Don't ask me.
Oh,
I'm
no, I
tough-
didn't.
my tough words. I always
It's
miss that.
underlined. Oh, no. How likely are you to request accessibility services or accommodations at the polling place? So we wonder, like, for college students, like, would they, maybe that's a question for Sharon or for Shara. I mean, how much have your counties worked to, I wonder how many people know that there is an ADA, or not an ADA compliant, but have a machine for people with disabilities in the precinct. Do they even have any idea?
I think most of ours is probably received by word of mouth, just the
Mhm.
fact that they've
Yeah.
used it and they've passed that on. We
Yeah.
say that we offer it, but the amount of people that actually would see it in print somewhere, that's interesting. It actually puts a good thought in my mind.
You
Yeah.
know, it
The
does.
public-
We may need another sign on our front door that specifically explains to people that there is a special piece of equipment in there for someone that is seeing and hearing impaired. I don't know that we have one of those signs. And now thinking about it, we may need one of those signs
Mhm.
in a prominent place so that they'll know before they actually walk in the door.
Ted,
Hey,
that might be
that's a-
something.
Yeah,
keep-
sorry, Martha. That's a great discussion that came up, and hopefully Tara can expand on this for us. But in these conversations, there was a large data set that came out of the 22 election that followed similar polling in the 20 and the 16 election, and all of those point to the same thing with regards to voters with disabilities, that their information about what is available to them comes from word of mouth and from print literature coming from the state board, much more likely than Facebook posts or social media information that the state board is putting out. And Ms. Blackburn, what you refer to is what they discuss as best practices, that good signage benefits everybody, but it does specifically benefit those who come to the polling place with a disability or with a desire to have accommodations.
Maybe we should have some signage in Braille. It certainly wouldn't hurt. I'm just trying to think of other ways we can get the message out, because these machines aren't being used enough. And I'm wondering if part of the reason they're not being used enough is some people feel intimidated if they have certain disabilities and they just don't bother coming in to vote.
Mhm.
And that would be a shame.
That would be consistent with stuff that I read in the past, right? Well, I actually have a friend that says, anybody can, she always makes a point of saying anybody could use those machines. It's just that people don't.
Which is why your wording is, I think, perfect here, because it's not asking, do you have a disability that would warrant, accessibility services or accommodation? It's simply, would you like to have some help or an accommodation when you go to the polling place? And I think that's
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that's good. And then, well, anyway, we need to probably wrap things up because I got class in 15 minutes. But then we thought it would be valuable to have an open-ended question that is, what do you think the biggest barrier to voting for you is? And then we'd hope that they would fill in, but of course, any of these questions are voluntary, what university they attend. So we're hoping we'll get some good data from this that can tell us about college student voting. And so maybe we could make some recommendations, but I have to talk to Leslie, but I should be done with the human subjects paperwork, or not paperwork, their review very soon. They're very, very, very responsive. So
Can I
any
ask a quick
questions?
question? Yes, can I ask, what platform are you putting this out on? Are you having people walk around and ask people to take the survey? Are
No,
you
I'm,
putting it out
well,
as
we're
a
gonna,
Google?
no, we're gonna put it up on Qualtrics. So UNC Charlotte owns a license to Qualtrics. It's a survey software. If
Okay.
you'd like, I can send you the preview of it when I haven't done it yet. haven't programmed it yet, but
That's okay. I was just curious. I just wondered like what medium you were going to use to reach the students.
well, so yeah, the hopefully just distributing the link via professors and or a QR code on flyers, excuse me, can I talk? Will reach the students. So Sharon, I mean, I'll just throw this out. If you have surveys that you want to do, I'm sure there are academics or grad students that can program them for you and send you a link and then download it and you can get
I do a
Michael
lot
to
of,
analyze it for you.
I do a lot of Google surveys of my own. I'm really a big fan of the QR codes, you know, scan and
Okay, yeah.
linking you in
So
because people have their
Google's
phones
good,
on.
right?
Google is good. It's very customizable. It's my experience.
Surprisingly so, I think. Yeah.
Yes, and extremely user friendly. And they fixed it now to where you don't have to have a Google account in order to access the surveys, so you can reach a broader audience. And it's a quick link. And so that was just kind of what I was a little bit curious about with you surveying students. The main thing they have with them is their phone. And if you've got a QR code or you've got a link, you're more likely to engage them. So I was just curious if that was the way you were going about it.
That's the plan. Yeah, hopefully it'll engage them. And I like Qualtrics because when you are previewing the survey, you can see what it would look like on the computer screen and what it would look like on the phone right
Oh, yeah,
next to each
Google-
other. So you
yeah,
can
Google
see if
allows
it's
that.
usable on the phone.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
That's very interesting.
All right. Thank you, Martha. Okay, I'm going to need some help here, Rachel, Martha, and the group. Let me know if this schedule would work because I'm looking at the interest of time here. Nadine, I don't know how long you will need to present, but can we hold that and my part till next meeting, and then also next meeting come up with our specific items that we want to look at in terms of potential change or reform we think should happen? I guess what I'm asking, Rachel, you may be the person to answer, timeline wise with our deadlines, would that work?
So I don't see why it wouldn't work. I think ultimately we're looking to have kind of some bullet points, the rough draft doesn't need to be the final draft.
Gotcha. Okay.
It doesn't need to be pages and pages. It doesn't need to be perfect. I think we're looking to just have an overall plan of what the
Okay.
final report is going to be.
Okay. And Nadine, does that mess you up too much if we hold your part till next meeting?
No, I just created those documents. So,
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a full presentation planned. I just created
Okay.
I did
All
my
right.
homework.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, this has been a very good and jam-packed meeting, and I was very excited to see our elections folks already thinking of ways they can improve access. So if nothing else comes out of this meeting, we're going to get, sounds like, some better signage to talk about the resources that are available. And I guess my other thing I would say related to that, we can see from this that there is certainly a role, and this will be somewhere in our recommendations for public information, good, robust public information as to what resources are available to our voters. And maybe the state can help send out some resources if counties can't pull the whole load. All right. Well, I didn't have anything else for the group. Again, I want to thank our special guests for coming out. I really appreciate it. And if no one else had anything else, I guess we're ready to wrap up here.
Thank you. Enjoyed
thank
it.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Very
Good
nice.
meeting.